Hello, America. We have some things that I think we should address. Matt Kibbe is going to join me here in just a second. But first, this week in news.
So effective immediately, no person other than a law enforcement officer or licensed security officer shall possess a firearm, either openly or concealed, within cities or counties, averaging 1,000 or more violent crimes per 100,000, and more than 90 firearm-related emergency department visits. So to put that in sort of a layman's terms, for 30 days in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County, it's the only place that meets both those standards. Statewide order, but only one place meets both criteria.
30.
We have far too many ER gunshot visits, and we have far too many crimes involving firearms. We are suspending open and concealed carry.
I have some comments on that. I bet Matt Kibbe has some too. Next. First, Roe versus Wade. Over 64 million babies were aborted in the United States. Nearly 1 in 5 pregnancies end up this way, even now. The abortion pill accounting for over half of the abortions performed. Another COVID benefit, I guess. Babies' lives are still at risk, and the Ministry of Preborn, I think, handles this the best way. We've partnered up with them to help save 70,000 babies' lives this year. We've got a good start, but we have to do more. Preborn introduces expecting moms to their babies by providing free ultrasounds. Just there, that works to save the baby, usually. It doubles the chances that mom is going to say yes. But the other problem is that you have moms who don't feel like they have any other choice. Nobody in her life is supporting her. Nobody in her life is for this. We have to not only save the baby, have compassion for her, but also have compassion for mom. They provide assistance to moms who choose life. So if they don't have, she doesn't have the money, she doesn't have the backup, she can't buy clothes or whatever it is, they help. Now, one ultrasound is the first step, just $28, but any gift of any size will help. A $140 gift sponsors 5 ultrasounds. $5,000 will sponsor Preborn's entire network for a whole day. So if you have the means, $15,000 will place an ultrasound machine in a needy pregnancy clinic. That is the key. That is just the beginning. Pound 250. Say the keyword baby. All gifts are tax deductible. Pound 250 or preborn.com/Glenn. Okay. Let me go back here to the governor, because she said a few things, and I want you to watch for a pattern on a few of these stories. Cut 2, please.
You took an oath to the Constitution. Isn't it unconstitutional to say you cannot exercise your carry license?
With one exception, and that is if there's an emergency, and I've declared an emergency for a temporary amount of time, I can invoke additional powers. No constitutional right, in my view, including my oath, is intended to be absolute. There are restrictions on.
No, that's not true. Even your own attorney general, the lawyer for the state, says, nope, not true. I'm not even sure if she read the Constitution, not the government, the federal government, but even her state constitution clearly outlines she can't do this. This is why no law enforcement in her state, including her attorney general, will do anything about it. Why did she do that? I think it's just another trial balloon. I think this is a governor who wants to be noticed by the left and was like, yeah, I'm going to take extraordinary action. And I'm glad it was pounded down by law enforcement, but it's got to run through the courts. Let me play cut 3. This is what the president's spokesperson said about the impeachment proceedings to the press. Watch.
And the purpose of what they're doing is a politically motivated, far-right, extreme series of attacks on the president and his family that are not rooted in the truth. And I think that what we can do and what the independent press can do is to hold them accountable for those lies over and over again.
This is remarkable because this is just following up on something the White House sent a letter to the biggest media moguls, if you will, in the country. And that letter was, you got to start taking on the Republicans for these lies. I don't think I've seen that before, except during COVID. And weren't they just slapped on the hands for doing that with COVID? I know if Donald Trump would have sent something that said, you need to take on, the media wouldn't have liked it. The media is in the bag, and this is yet another assault on our freedom of speech and the freedom of press by this White House. One more. This is Scott Smith. Do you remember Scott Smith? He was the guy who was arrested at a school board meeting because his daughter was raped. And they didn't tell him about it. They didn't do anything about it. And so he goes to address this at a school board, and he was drug out of there. He was going to trial. He wanted to go to trial, but he took a pardon from the governor of Virginia. Here's why. Listen.
So we were chatting off camera. Governor Youngkin had offered a pardon for you before, and you said, no, thank you. I don't want that. Why?
Well, to be clear, it was only a month ago. Mm-hmm. It wasn't months ago. But because I didn't want to drop my appeal and accept responsibility for the charges that I was convicted of in the lower court, that was unacceptable to me. I really wanted to win this straight up on my own merit in court. But unfortunately, you know, as things have played out, and, you know, our justice system across this land is unfortunately politicized and weaponized to the hilt, and that should scare every American.
So you believe there's no way that you could have won in court?
I think I might have been able to win in court with a judge if it would have been the right judge. Mm-hmm. But no, I think in a jury, I think it would have been a hung jury at best.
Unbelievable. As he said, that should scare every American, but I don't think it does. I think all three of these stories should scare every American. This is the biggest off-ramp to the American system of government and justice I've ever seen in my life. And this is just in 1 week with 3 stories. It's rampant. Matt Kibbe is with us. He's BlazeTV host of Kibbe on Liberty and Free the People president from freethepeople.org. Hi, Matt.
It's good to be back.
Thank you. Good to have you. Good to have you.
But there's no happy stories, I guess, happening. Everything is crazy. I'm completely triggered by the governor because it sounds like COVID lockdowns all over again.
Yes.
Just temporary.
Yes.
Because it's an emergency. We're going to suspend all of your rights and all of your privileges as an individual. And this is the same model. I sort of heard her say, she didn't say it, but just 2 weeks to slow the spread.
Yeah, right.
Just a month to slow the spread.
Right. And it's, you know what's scary is, I do believe, I don't think that was a mistake on her part or even honest. I think that was a political move that backfired on her, thank God. But I look at this, Matt, and it is clear to me that we have real emergencies coming. Our banking sector with our dollar, that is going to end in an emergency, just going to.
Yeah.
Or that's going to give all kinds of powers. And that might explain the arrogance of the people in power, that they're just not listening to people because they know they're not going to have to.
Yeah.
They got it under control.
Well, they found our tell. They scared us to death with COVID, and we deferred to the experts, everybody, when we didn't know what was going on. And they finally figured out, okay, this is the way that we can run rampant with power. So now everything is an emergency. Every single thing that they do. And, you know, even I was talking with Stu about this yesterday, even this idea that Putin, who is a really bad guy, is the next Hitler. Like, you have to do whatever it takes because that's this existential emergency. And if we do that, that's just a blank check for whatever they want to drop in next. They're trying to do guns, they're trying to do climate change. The emergencies are not going to end anymore because they found our tell. This is the one thing we'll give away our liberties for.
So, but in a good way, we learned that that can't necessarily be done. In New Mexico, I mean, she's being brought into court now. She should be
Even
impeached.
Ted Lieu was like, whoa,
Right.
that's too far.
Right. I mean, that's incredible to me.
Yeah.
That there wasn't any seeming support from anyone on that.
That's good news, and I do think that more than just the people that watch BlazeTV are waking up to what happened over the last 3 or 4 years and how much we lost and how we have to give it back. We don't trust the experts anymore. We don't trust the authoritarians that say we're just going to do this temporarily. And to me, that's an encouraging thing. But I think you have to go back and sort of dismantle the deception and the cover-up that led to the lockdowns in the first place.
Let's talk about that, because you're doing something with Rand Paul to get to the end, get to the actual truth on the COVID and COVID lockdowns.
Yeah. So, like, you did that show very early on, and you had an investigative team that it was pretty obvious that early that we knew that it was gain of function. We knew that the American government was financing it, and we knew that it
was
happened
in bed with Big Pharma.
Yeah. And so that to me is not the mystery anymore. The mystery is the cover-up itself. And it wasn't just Fauci. You're getting all of these semi-redacted emails now from Fauci that clearly demonstrate that he even knew that it was a lab leak in Wuhan. But then you see through the Twitter files and reporters like Michael Schellenberger are continuing to release all of these fantastical stories about the FBI and the CIA and the national security apparatus doing this incredible censorship thing. And yesterday, I don't know if you saw this, Schellenberger exposed a CIA whistleblower.
Yep.
That
bribed 6 out of the 7 members of a committee trying to decide, is this lab leak or is this natural? And 6 of the 7 said it's a lab leak.
Why that? Like, that sounds extraordinary. It sounds completely tyrannical, and I think Schellenberger's headline was the CIA is compromised. And I said, no, they're not compromised, they're complicit. And the reason that this cover-up is going into the deepest reaches of the national security state is that this was some kind of mad science experiment that came out of 9/11. And I first discovered this when I had Jay Bhattacharya on my show. And he's, of course, the Stanford epidemiologist that was one of the guys saying this is crazy. And he pointed to me, and it's sort of obvious now, but he pointed to me that the explosion in funding for NIAID happened in response to 9/11.
Of course.
And this is where
biological weapons.
Yeah, this is where Fauci got all of his extraordinary powers. So I think as we keep digging, we're going to discover that the most important aspects of our government were culpable in this whole thing, and they will do anything to cover it up.
They have to, like the Nord Stream pipeline. I don't think I've ever asked you. I think it's pretty clear we blew it up.
Yeah.
Do you think?
It seemed like we'll never prove that, but it seems so obvious.
It's very obvious. I mean, nobody's looking. That was a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Nobody's looking, huh?
It's sort of like cocaine in the White House, but a bigger deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an act of war. God help us all.
Yeah.
Then you have, not only that, you now have the Biden impeachment scandal. I have to tell you, the more you look into this, I just did a show on it on Wednesday, everybody's involved. Everybody's involved.
Yeah.
I mean, it was an overthrow of a government. It is graft. It is oligarchs. It is bribery on the highest levels over there, all over the world, highest levels here. They're now selling farmland, all the farmland to like places like BlackRock. They're rebuilding already. You're still being bombed. What do you mean you're rebuilding?
Yeah.
This is all about the World Economic Forum and their partners really enriching themselves. And the corruption, I just don't think, if this is a movie, the president and his son are killed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If this is a movie, the bad guys don't let him, or they pin it all on him,
Right.
and let him take the fall so they can get out. This one is so deep and has so much money. You begin to understand why they need the emergency to lock us down.
Yeah.
Because we're close.
It's enough to make you, if you're cynical enough, you might just become a libertarian,
Yes.
realizing that government can't do anything right. You can't trust them with power to do things because they have their own interests and they collude with big business, and all of a sudden you have these grandiose schemes that are bleeding the working class dry. So you almost then sound like some of my friends on the left. Like,
Yes.
there is this thing, they call it capitalism, but it's not capitalism at all. It's the collusion of big government and big business.
It is the definition of fascism.
Yeah.
It's not what people think fascism is, but that is the definition of
Fascism isn't being mean.
Yeah.
It's government control of the means of production.
Yeah.
Right?
And everybody enriches, and you can enrich yourself as long as you agree with us.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, with the corruption of the DOJ, the impeachment, the money printing we're doing with the budget, January 6th, the abuse of the court system with, I mean, have you ever seen our attorneys for a client being arrested in large number? Have you ever seen that, like, even in, a crime family case where all the attorneys also?
Well, I think it happens in Venezuela. So maybe we have seen it before, but it does seem, and I'm not the first person to say this, it feels completely banana republic.
Oh, yeah.
And the problem is it's like a ratchet effect because people, Trump supporters are now saying, well, hold my beer. If we ever get power again, we're going to do the same thing. And I don't know how you put the genie back in the box, because the one thing I learned during lockdowns was that the Constitution is at best quite leaky. Like, it should have protected us from all this tyranny.
But if the people don't know it,
But if the people don't know it, and if the justice system doesn't function as a defender of those constitutional principles,
you don't have anything.
We don't have anything. And you and I have been saying this for over a decade, maybe 15 years. It's really going to come down to people rediscovering and understanding and defending those principles.
We're running out of time. You optimistic?
I have to be optimistic. This is why we do what we do. And I am optimistic in the sense that I ultimately believe in the wisdom of crowds. I think people who are free have an ability to figure stuff out and solve problems. This is the entire basis of our belief system. And the only question is there a tipping point where government, with all these new tools, all these tech tools that they have, at what point can't we go back? It's never been true that we can't go back. So the question is, is this different? I still believe in freedom, and I really trust
I believe
people.
in freedom too, but I believe that the system can grab you and hold you for quite some time until, new ideas, new technology, whatever, changes the dynamic. But if they're the ones with AI, and we don't have AI,
right?
I mean, I'm not going to have access to the quantum computer.
Yeah.
But they will.
You can watch what's happening in China and be quite pessimistic about the ability because Tiananmen Square was that moment when the people stood up and they were destroyed.
Yes.
Literally destroyed. Hong Kong comes later and they were destroyed.
Another benefit of COVID.
But I wonder, and this goes back to the money printing and the economy thing, the one thing that I think wakes up people is their inability to put food on the table. And this is a horrible model for social change because things have to get so bad that people rise up and clean house. we're kind of hoping that we don't have to get there in order to.
I've been thinking of Humpty Dumpty a lot this week because people are talking about just break it up, just destroy it, blah, blah, blah. Be careful what you break.
Yeah.
You know, you have to clean it out. We have to figure out a way to unplug it and plug it back in and reset to factory settings. But once you break it, all the king's horses, all the king's men are not going to be able to put this back. You know, it's dangerous.
A less draconian example of how civil disobedience can work in our favor is the trial balloons. Are we going to have to wear masks again? Are we going to have to get another round of boosters in order to keep our jobs? They're going to try to do all that. And what's different this time is I think more people, enough people, will say, no, we're just not going to do it. And no tyrant can make a majority of the population submit to that kind of behavior. We have to be the guys that step up first so that it becomes safer and safer for more people to just say no.
Okay, I want to come back to just talk briefly about Rand Paul and are we ever going to get Fauci? Because he threatens it all the time.
Yeah.
You're spending a lot of time with Rand Paul right now on that issue. But I also want to talk about some good things that you are doing, comedy.
Yeah.
I've said this to comedians and some of them, about half of them go, Comedy is coming back. It is coming back and it's hitting hard. And you're part of that. So we'll get to that in just a second. First, let me tell you about My Patriot Supply. It's not fun to think the unthinkable, but I think Matt and I both know if an emergency happens, you've got to be able to take care of yourself. You have to be able to be in the situation where you're not waiting for the government to come and save you. You'll become part of the problem. You have to be self-sufficient. So may I recommend you get some food storage from My Patriot Supply. It's always better to have it, not need it, rather than need it, not have it. My Patriot Supply. They are the nation's leader in high-quality emergency food. If things go south, you're going to be fine. I want you to go over to mypatriotsupply.com and prepare today with emergency food that will stay up to 25 years fresh. It offers, I think, 2,000 calories a day for each individual. Everybody should have one pack for each member of the family. If you have the money and you want to be charitable, share it, get some extra for others because there's going to be others. Order by 3 p.m. Your items ship the same day, fast. mypatriotsupply.com. Okay. So tell me, because he seems pretty confident, but I've lost confidence in anything getting done because of, as Mike Lee calls them, the law firm.
Yeah.
That is, the heads of the Senate and the House.
Part of what we've been documenting in this new project, and I don't know if it's a documentary or an episodic series because we may just have to keep going. One of the things that Rand has struggled with is he's in the minority in Senate. The chairman of his own committee, government oversight, does not share with him the information that they have access to. So he's constantly FOIAing things and demanding things. And eventually the chairman or whoever's in charge says, well, we have that already. And then he goes through a whole nother round of things. The thing that's happening with Fauci, Rand has outright accused him of perjuring himself.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing that's happening that I find is interesting is even CNN is calling out Fauci now. So I wonder if a phone call comes from headquarters, whatever it is, saying Fauci's got to go. He's damaged goods. The counter argument is Fauci knows where too many of the bodies are buried. Mm-hmm. And he knows that he's not the tip of the spear, that there's other layers of responsibility in this humanitarian catastrophe that they unleashed on the world. So does that protect him from being the fall guy on this? It looks like someone has said it's time to get rid of Fauci. And that tells us that Rand might be successful. But again, that's not the end of the story.
That's not success. It's, if Joe Biden would be forced to resign because of this impeachment in a Nixon way. I mean, I don't know if you saw the Washington Post.
Yeah.
But, a guy who's basically
Again,
CIA operative.
Someone called in and said it's time.
It's time.
Yeah.
Wrote, maybe it's time for Joe Biden to retire. Not for that. He's fantastic, but he's getting a little old, and and that was, I think, the sign from the deep state, the establishment, that
Right.
yeah, maybe it's time to go. But if he resigns, and it is for any other reason, and the impeachment proceedings do not go through, then we have taught everybody in the deep state, don't worry about it. That is not a two-person deal.
Right.
That is, John Kerry's son was involved in this as well at the very beginning. Now, give him credit, he got out because I think he saw early on, oh my, this is bad.
Yeah.
But you have all of the stuff from the military, all of the billions going on over there that are lost, that are now in foreign or Swiss bank accounts for Zelensky. You've got to throw him under the bus. He's the perfect guy because he's old. He's
Right.
not going to be able to remember soon. And you could say, he left, it was just him, but it's not.
Right. He may be the fall guy for this, and they'll find another useful idiot puppet. And I'm not calling the vice president an idiot. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that.
No,
but,
just a puppet.
yeah, just a puppet.
Yeah. Do you think he's the candidate?
I do not.
I don't either.
And I saw your comments on this, and I think there's very practical reasons why he won't be the candidate, because I don't think he's actually capable of running for re-election. And the disconnect between their message of the economy is great and the Biden economy is working for working Americans, and the polling. I watched this on MSNBC now, telling us how damaged the Biden presidency is. So the word is out. The instructions have been said. This guy has to go.
But I just did a show today where I talked to people who voted for Biden, don't like Biden, but if it's Trump, they will not vote. They'll vote for Biden again.
Yeah.
So what happens with Trump? Because I think they're just making him stronger and stronger and stronger with everything they try to do to him.
I almost believe that that's purposeful.
I do too.
I watched this in 2016 where they, Morning Joe had Trump on every day, building him and making him unbeatable because they were sure that they could defeat him in the general. I think they're doing that again, and I think it's going to be an election of disappointment for most Americans. Like they don't like. Are they going to hold their nose and just vote against the person they don't like the most? This is not a sustainable model, I don't think, because people just lose faith in the process itself.
You don't have to share. Do you have a pick?
I do not have a pick. This will upset some people, but the people that I find most interesting, Governor DeSantis is not interesting to me anymore. Although I think he's been a great governor. I think the GOP machine has captured him, and I think he's running a lame-ass GOP circa 1998 campaign, and I think most people view that as fake and boring. I think Vivek Ramaswamy is saying some really interesting things. He's clearly courting the libertarian vote. I don't know if he believes those things or not, but I like the fact that people think that saying freedom-based libertarian things is still a compelling way to attract voters.
I would think for youth, he is the most compelling candidate.
Yeah.
Because he's not run-of-the-mill anything.
Yeah.
He's like, this doesn't work. And
And
I think most Americans are there.
And I also, I find RFK quite interesting. I understand who he was.
Yeah. Do you think he is still? He won't come on the show so far, at least. We keep inviting him. I thought we had a date, but we keep inviting him, and it's always a problem.
So I saw him at PorkFest, which is this gathering of beautiful, crazy libertarians in New Hampshire, and he was clearly soliciting libertarian votes. I saw him give a speech. It was the most libertarian speech I've ever heard from anybody ever running for president, including libertarian candidates.
Do you believe that?
That's the question.
Because he's on global warming, he's very fascistic.
And so I don't know if I believe it or not, but I'm also quite cynical of anything that any politician utters at any time. So the question is, are they saying it because they think there's a constituencies for those values? And I think that in itself is a win. Right.
I mean, he, to me, knows how deep the deep state can go. He knows what the deep state can do. His family witnessed it. He, to me, if he didn't have the scary totalitarian kind of tendencies deep in his past, he would be very exciting. I can see why people are attracted to him. So, okay, tell me real quickly about the comedy that you're doing.
Okay, we have a new series called Comedy is Murder, starring Lou Perez, and our philosophy is that if you want to talk about really difficult things that are tearing society apart, let's tell a joke about it, and it de-escalates.
It does.
One of the first one we released was called Misgendering a Murderer, and Lou plays a mass murderer who now identifies as a woman. He doesn't look much like a woman, but it sort of de-escalates this endless like firing squad that we have about gender and identity. And Joe Rogan retweeted it, so we thought that was super cool that it sort of exploded it.
When you walked on the set, you walked by, we're just building the All in the Family set. That's the original set from All in the Family, and I'm doing it because I want to do a few specials on the power of comedy to diffuse and to talk about really tough things. Also a little bit of the hypocritical stance from Meathead now. But I'm watching it, and the first time I watched it, as an adult, I used to watch it when I was a kid, but really watching it, especially now in these days, oh my gosh. Oh, they took on everything. I mean, they took on 5 things that no one would take on at any time, all in one show. And it was like that every single week. And I think it got us through the 60s and early 70s.
Yeah, and I think as I think about it, that's probably where I learned and I must have been a tween at the time, just watching All in the Family. I think that's where I learned about difficult things about race, right? Yeah. And if they weren't allowed to say that, then I would have not been able to then have conversations with my parents and try to understand what's going on.
If I didn't see Archie Bunker, I wouldn't have understood a racist, perhaps in my own neighborhood or family.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you'd be like, it's Uncle Jim. You know what I mean? That's crazy old Uncle Jim. But when you see somebody that the family loves and they're clearly racist, you're like, that's not okay. It's not just crazy Uncle Jim.
A shameless plug for our second project with our friend Andrew Heaton. It's called Adults Are Talking. And it is we're trying to recapture what comedy used to be before it was destroyed by wokeness. And it's a variety show. There'll be skits. There'll be a desk piece where he tells jokes. The first interview is with our friend Michael Malice about his new book, The White Pill. And we're doing this all during a writer's strike where apparently they're not allowed to work anymore, but we're still working.
Yeah, that's the way it always is. Freethepeople.org is where you can see those comedy pieces. Matt, as always, thank you for everything you do.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. We'll see you Monday. Good night.